Welcome back, guys, to the MVM Show. I'm Titus, and I'm here again with Mr. Jim Muller, and we are excited to bring you some more things. We have so many. I've told you guys this already in the last couple episodes, but we have so many things we want to talk about and cover and access the knowledge of Mr. Muller. So we are pumped to get this rolling, and a lot of these are his ideas too, and I confirmed it's great topics, and love to hear his opinion. Just a reminder, guys, if you want to buy the chokes, I know Jim, I got a couple more people telling me, doggone it, I just bought this yesterday and I heard the podcast today. So,
Yeah,
but
it happens.
like you said, you ain't going to regret it. It doesn't matter either way, but we do offer now, and he offers it. And we're thankful for that at 10% off for our listeners, viewers. If you put in the code on checkout, all caps, MVM 2024, you'll get 10% off. So, and I do have the links in the descriptions and the show notes. So if you guys want to go straight to the site where you need, you click on that link and then you can put that code in at checkout. So let's get started. We want to talk about today is different hunting scenarios and the different species in those scenarios. So let's just go ahead and dig right in.
Cool, Titus. So being a duck hunter all my life, I've hunted in a lot of different scenarios, and it sort of seems like, duck hunters in general, they don't talk about different hunting scenarios. They just sort of talk about duck hunting, right? Hunting mallards or hunting teal or hunting scoter or eider geese, whatever. But they don't really talk about, or shall I say, instructors, teachers, things like that don't really talk about the differences that are associated with the different species of hunting and also the different layouts of hunting. And what I mean by that is, like, sometimes we're hunting in a layout blind. It could be in a cornfield. It could be on an island. Sometimes we're hunting in a layout boat. Sometimes we're hunting in timber, right? And other times we're hunting in a marsh, a salt marsh, a freshwater marsh, cattails, phragmites, low grass, tall grass. Sometimes we're in open water. Like my wife and I and our friends and some customers, we'll go out in my 28-foot pilot house in open water and we'll be hunting sea ducks. And, it's just a totally different aspect and totally different types of not only hunting and shooting ability and capability, but also ballistics. You need to really change what you're doing and the way you're thinking when you hunt these different scenarios, even though we're hunting ducks and geese, right? So give you an example, like off the cuff, if you're hunting pheasant, if you're hunting them here in New England, they're stocked. You're hunting them over a dog pointing. The pheasant are flushing at your feet. And you're shooting them. I mean, you could shoot them inside 5 yards if you wanted to. And if you let them go really far, I mean, it's like a 30-yard shot and you're waiting forever for them to get there, right? However, if you go out Midwest, these pheasant are wild. They're tougher. They're faster. They're running and flying from you 40, 50, 100 yards away before even close to them. So different ballistics, different ammo, different choke choice, different hunting scenario, right? The same sort of thing relays and transpires right into the duck hunting and the goose hunting. So basically, let's start with one of them, right? So we could sort of talk about the examples. So let's talk about like timber hunting, right? A lot of people, like in Arkansas, Louisiana, and many other places, they're doing a lot of timber hunting. So in all the times I've timber hunted, it's normally obstructed view, right? A lot of times you're shooting through branches, you're shooting through brush. It's hard to see birds coming from long distance because you have obstruction in front of you. You're shooting tight windows, or you're trying to find holes between the trees or between the branches to make your shot on that bird as he's approaching that field of area, right? Or field of view. So normally in timber hunting, your shots are a lot closer, right? Doesn't matter if it's a mallard, a teal, a wood duck, a pintail, a shoveler. Normally, your shots are going to be pretty close because that's that style of hunting. Um, so in these scenarios, you're going to want to use like a decoy choke. You're going to want to use smaller shot in your ammo. You could get away with a lighter payload. You can even get away with a faster velocity ammo because a lot of your shots are not going to exceed that 25-yard mark, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe 30. So in that type of hunting scenario, close, obstructed view, small windows, right? Mm-hmm. Now, on the same sort of scenario, but different, if you're hunting in a marsh setup, you're in a duck boat, or you're standing in the grass, or you're standing in a blind that's sort of low where you're hiding. This scenario is similar but different. You can see birds coming from a long way if you're standing up looking around, and then you see them starting to come and you can get down and get hidden. Then your view becomes obstructed because you're looking through blind material. But when the birds do come to the decoys or come within shooting range and you stand up, normally the view is pretty unobstructed. You've got a pretty open shooting lane and shooting availability, and you're pretty mobile, right?
Right.
But it's still going to be pretty close shots because you're hunting in a marsh scenario, maybe in a creek or canal, and you're shooting over decoys again, right? So again, the same sort of ammo and choke choice would prevail for timber and marsh hunting for the most part. Just slightly different shooting skill or shooting knowledge involved with those scenarios. Mm-hmm. And then we go from that and, we go into like the layout boat and the layout blind, right? So a layout blind, you're normally laying down. You can normally see pretty good, but the problem is you're very confined, right? Mm-hmm. You can't like stand up and turn around and start shooting. You cannot stand up and swivel from the ankles. You're confined in a ground blind, in a coffin blind. The only thing you could do when it's time to shoot is sit up and shoot what's in front of you, mm-hmm. right? You have a very small field of movement or a small window of movement, a very small shooting lane, however you want to call it. The same thing holds true if you're in a layout boat. You're in open water, you can see very far, but you can only see in front of you, You can't right. Look behind you. We're not an owl. So you can only see what's in front of you. You may be able to see a very far distance, but your shooting lane or your shooting window is very small and very condensed, right? So what that means is when the birds are coming, normally if you're in a layout boat, you're hunting divers. Divers fly fast. A lot of times your shots are further because you're in open water, but because you're in a layout boat, you don't have much movement at all to be able to swing the gun. And, the best way to be able to move a gun when you're in a standing position is we literally swivel at the ankles up, right? We don't just swivel at the torso and we don't just move our arms. We literally swing from the ankles up. A lot of people don't know that, but that's the proper way to shoot a moving target. Well, obviously, if you're in a layout boat or a layout blind, you have nothing but your upper body movement, right? So right. It's very confined. So this is very challenging for a lot of reasons. And then you go the opposite end of the spectrum and we're hunting open water. We're on a breakwater. We're on an island. We're in a big open boat where the view is totally unobstructed. You could circle around 360 degrees with your feet. You can look around. You can see what's around. You can take much longer shots because it offers the opportunity. A lot of times our decoys are going to be out further because we're in big water. Those big water birds sometimes are a little shy to come into islands or come into breakwaters or, come near a big open boat. Unless, of course, they're old squaw or scoter or eider. Until late in the season, those birds will, come in pretty close. But it's open water, it's big water, right?
Yeah.
So we have the potential and the opportunity to be able to shoot further. We don't have to worry about birds falling in the grass far away to where we have trouble finding them. They're going to fall in open water. We could go find them with a boat. Even if they're crippled and they dive, they're going to come up. We'll be able to get them usually, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So all totally different hunting scenarios, even though they're ducks and geese, right? So this is what I want to sort of talk about, because a lot of people don't talk about this. They don't talk about how this affects our shot shell choice, maybe even our firearm choice, and certainly our choke tube choice, right? As well as
Right.
our shooting skill and knowledge and ability. So let's go back to where we started. I believe we started in timber and marsh, right? So I had mentioned that would be like my decoy choke with
Yep.
smaller shot. You could get away with faster velocity if that's something you like, because the shots are always going to be close. So it's okay to shoot higher velocity with a lighter payload because the pattern won't have a lot of time to become sparse, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you could get away with all that. Steel shot is fine, more than needed. Bismuth is excellent, more than needed. And a decoy choke is plenty, right?
Right.
Or if you're not shooting Muller chokes or another choke, I mean, if you're shooting factory chokes or someone else's choke, an improved cylinder is fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Light modified. So the thing about that type of shooting is, like I said, it's somewhat obstructed, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have brush in front of you, trees in front of you. You're trying to pick windows. So when I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go practice on sporting clays or 5-stand or FETAS. But primarily, if I'm going to practice for timber hunting or marsh hunting, where my shots are going to be closer, where they're going to be a little bit picky as far as the window where I'm shooting, I'm going to go to a sporting clay course where I could actually sort of simulate that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to shoot targets that are incoming. I'm going to shoot targets that are overhead, coming from behind. And I'm going to shoot a lot of birds crossing by me. And I'm going to be practicing distances anywhere from 10 yards out to 30 yards max. Okay? Because normally I'm not going to be shooting past 30 yards in those scenarios.
Right.
And when I go to shoot sporting clays or 5-stand, these are the types of targets I'm going to pick. And
Yep.
what I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot the same choke that I would use in those scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to try to pick an ammo that is similar, right? And what that would be, you're going to normally shoot lead. You could shoot steel 7s. They make a target load that's steel 7s. They're 1,400 feet per second, faster than I prefer. But like I said, in this scenario, it's okay. So you could use steel 7s, which is considered a target load, and it's acceptable at sporting clay courses. Or you could use just a regular lead target load at anywhere between 1,250 and 1,300, which is going to simulate very close to what you're using for hunting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Within reason, anyway. And this is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to practice on targets that would represent shooting windows or shooting obstructed through branches or trees. I'm going to try to find a place where I could practice targets similar to that, right?
Yep.
And then moving on to like layout blinds and layout boats. I'm going to go someplace, which if you're lucky enough, you have places you can go where you're not going to be restricted by management or people being around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And you can actually go places where you could literally kneel down in the stand, or you could actually sit down next to the stand and you can shoot targets. I mean, there's a lot of places where you can do that, and they don't, frown upon it as long as you're safe. It doesn't matter if you're kneeling down or sitting down next to the stand if you're still aiming in the same direction and being safe about it. Yep. So this is something that a lot of people don't realize you can do on sporting clay courses, provided it's the right course and they allow it, right? So that's what I do with that. And then just match your choke and your shot based on what you would be using. And it will literally train you and allow you to be comfortable before you get into that scenario, right? Because I'll be honest with you, even though I've been hunting all my life, the first time I got into a layout boat, which was many years ago, but the first time I got into a layout boat, I was already a pretty, good shooter and very confident and good ability. I mean, I was shooting in the high 80s on sporting clays pretty consistently at the time. I got into a layout boat and the first birds came and I sat up and I was like, "Oh my Lord." those
Yeah.
those birds came and went as fast as I could even
Yep.
think about it, right?
Hmm.
I didn't even fire the gun. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'll never forget it. It was a pack of bufflehead.
Huh.
I saw them come into the decoys. I sat up before I could even get on them. They were gone, and
Yep.
I couldn't move.
Yep.
They were already outside of my pivot range, right?
Yep.
And I was like, "Holy cow, this is a whole different world right now.
Yep.
I've got to change everything I'm doing." And let me tell you, I struggled, right? So this same scenario comes into play for a lot of people. I see it all the time. They're established shooters. They do well in the cornfield or wherever they may be, and then you put them in a layout blind or a layout boat, and everything falls apart.
Oh yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm a good shooter, and some of my brothers too. But when we went to Lake Michigan, out of Wisconsin, and we did the old squaw, I realized real quick,
Yes.
like you said, sitting up, the timing too is what's crazy because, like you said, you're used to when you're shooting like mallards or whatever, you're kind of used to letting them get right where they need to be and then getting up and shooting. But like you said with that, because you don't want to flare them, right? But it seemed like with divers or with those old squaw, it seemed like you had to get up in advance almost earlier than your brain wanted to get ready because the process is crazy. And I remember, like, to me, it's like an insult to take more than a box, right? Because like I should be able to shoot my limit with the box. But the guy that we went with, a friend of ours, he was like, "You better bring two." And I'm like, "Dude, I don't need no 2 boxes." But I didn't factor in sometimes those cripples with those old squaw. Those are the toughest birds, man. I can't believe. But anyways, just throwing that in. My experience too is the same thing.
Yep. I this past season I was in a nice setup in a nice layout boat, and I had a Drake bufflehead come humming. He was coming like right at me, coming right up the line, and just as I was getting ready to sit up, like you said, he just hooked a left and was like going by, and I was like, "Oh!" And I was running out of room, and I got in front of him, and I pulled the trigger, and I stopped. I was locked up. I couldn't go any further, and I let go of the gun with my left hand, and I just kept my right hand on the gun for the shot cam video and followed that bufflehead as he skipped along the water because I got him.
Oh, my goodness.
But it was one-handed because I couldn't move anymore with my left hand attached to the gun, And so it's just funny, no matter how far we move along with our shooting ability, when it comes to a different scenario, which is why I want to talk about this, it's a different scenario. And we don't think about it until it's too late. Like we're in it. And now we're like, "Oh my Lord, I can't see through these bushes. I've never done this. How am I going to shoot anything?" Or I've never sat up to shoot something out of a blind. How am I going to do this? So this is why I wanted to talk about this, because so many of us are faced with these scenarios and we don't even think about it until we're in it, right? So that's why I wanted to bring this all up. So getting back to the whole, off-season practice, right? I'm a huge I'm a huge promoter about that. It's a huge component because I take shooting seriously, right? It's my life. It's what I love. It's what I do. I'm competitive in sporting clays. And, I like to consider myself a master wing shooter because of the amount I've done. So when it's off season, I'm not going to just fish, right? Even though I'd like to fish just every day and not think about anything else. What I'm thinking about while I'm fishing sometimes is, hey, when can I go to a sporting clay course and practice these targets I'm thinking about in my head, right? I'm always striving to be able to go at least once a week or at least twice a month, absolute minimum, and go shoot sporting clays. And
let me ask you something, Jimmy. There, are you still competing?
No, only because I just don't have the time right now, Titus.
Okay. The only reason I ask you that is because I wanted to clarify that the reason you're saying that it has nothing to do with you competing. It
No.
has to do with you wanting to be a better shot and a better waterfowler.
Yes. All the shooting I do and all the amount of shooting I've done, if I don't touch my shotgun for a month, it feels foreign to me when I pick it up.
Yeah.
And even though I could go hit something very, very routinely, right? It feels weird when I pick it up instead of just being second nature and part of me. And
Yeah.
I don't like that. So,
Yeah.
so what I want to do is I want to make sure that throughout the season, not just when it gets to the season, but throughout the season, I'm shooting at least a couple times a month to keep that instinct, to keep that smoothness, to keep that gun fit, to keep everything natural. It's all it's all subconscious, right?
Yeah.
And the more we do it, the more that becomes subconscious. Now, a lot of shooting is conscious. We do have to think about a lot of things, but when you're pulling the trigger, it should become subconscious. So you're not thinking about it. And that's a whole nother scenario we could get into.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother big world we could talk about.
Right.
But when you're practicing somewhat often, it makes you a much better shooter and it makes you much more aware with your shotgun of what you're doing. So I'm a big component on practicing in sporting clays. When we talk about this next thing, so the layout blind and layout boat, very confined and very small window shooting. Sometimes further shots, even though they're confined and all that. Sometimes it's very close and very fast, right? So these are things we need to practice if we want to do well while we're in those scenarios. Marsh, timber, closer shots, tight windows, all that stuff. Then, we go into breakwaters and open waters and big boats. You look at guys like Jeff Coates. He's out in Pit Boss. He's in I think it's a 32 foot duck water. I mean, you're talking big boat, big movement, big windows, big areas. You could see forever. And, you're definitely open to the opportunity to be able to push your distances, right? If you choose to do so. And you're hunting tough birds. These birds dive over 100 feet deep. They've got lungs on them like an air balloon. They're tough, right? Eider, they have thick skulls. They have a lot of down. They're a big-bodied bird. And let me tell you, all these birds fly a lot faster than you think they're moving. It's like a sandhill crane or a swan or even a goose, right? You think that they're at 30 yards. They're actually at 40. You think that they're flying 25 miles an hour, they're doing 40. Okay?
Yeah, really. And the size throws you off.
Yeah.
That was a struggle I had on honkers for a while. It was just, you're like, oh, this is an easy target, but they're flying faster than you think.
Yep. And, the thing about big birds, not to get off subject, but mentioning like geese, sandhill cranes, swans, and same thing happens with big white eider and big scoter and even old squaw, right? And goldeneye. Goldeneye are white. They appear a lot closer than they are. They appear slower than they are because it just looks that way. So the thing about that is you need to practice targets that are fast and far, because when you're shooting a goose or a sandhill crane or a swan, my father always taught me, don't look at the body of the bird. We all get sucked into looking at the movement of the wings and the body because it's so big. You look at the head and pretend it's a teal or a clay target, and you shoot the head. You don't look at the body. And when you do that, you end up on the front of the bird instead of always taking tail feathers out of the bird.
That's such a good tip, Jim, because that's exactly what I did, and I'm sure many others did. Like again, going back to honkers, you just see this big body, and you're totally focused on the body instead of looking at the head. And when I started aiming, like treating the head as, like you said, like a teal or the target, totally changed it. Totally changed everything. So that's such a great tip. That's a good reminder for me right now. Just thinking about any bird is not looking at the body, focusing on the head.
Yep. And here's the other important factor about that a lot of people don't talk about. I always look at the head on a bird when I'm shooting it because the head always points in the direction the bird is going to go.
Mm-hmm.
So just like when you're driving a car, right? You're always looking at where you need to go.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing goes for a bird, So if you're looking at the head and you're focused on the head, like imagining it was a clay target or imagining that was just your entire duck, the head. If you're really focused 100% on the head of that bird and you're looking at it, you're going to see what that head is doing. You're going to see if it's starting to lift up, where the bird's going to start to climb. You're looking if he's looking down at decoys, where he's going to start to drop altitude. I mean, you're seeing a lot looking at the head of a bird. And let's face it, most of us as wing shooters, when we miss behind, right?
Yep.
Most of us.
Yep.
So if we're focused on the head of the bird, we've just given ourselves a huge benefit in our shooting, because now we are already looking at the front of the bird versus the center of the bird.
Yep.
So we've already gained a foot. Okay. And then because you're going to mount and you're going to lead in front of that object that you're focused on, now you've gained another foot because of your lead, right? So now just by looking at the head, we've gained a minimum of 2 feet versus looking at the middle of the body. So
because of the distance, right?
Yes.
Wow,
so that alone is going to help your shooting.
That's crazy.
Yep.
You don't think of that though. You don't do that geometry in your head, but that is such a huge thing to think about.
Yes.
Like, I don't know how you could dig into that anymore, but I mean, maybe can we dig into that just a hair more for another 1 minute?
Yeah,
because
totally.
So say if the bird's at 30 yards and take 2 scenarios, 30 yards crossing from right to left, and you aim in the body on the one, which I already know what the scenario, what's going to happen there, but let's just say you put it on the body there, and in the next scenario you put it in front of the head. What distance, just guess, and I know that's just there's a lot of factors involved there, but
but still,
how much more are you missing just in that little distance on the bird versus 30 yards?
So if you're shooting a sustained lead, because we have different leads, right? We have swing through, which you start behind the target, pass it, and pull a trigger when the right time. Then you've got pull away, where you start near the bird and you accelerate slowly away from the bird, and when the gap looks right, you pull a trigger as you're moving. And then you have sustained lead, where you come up to the kill amount, you come up to what the lead's supposed to be or close to it, and then you maintain it. And of course you can adjust as you're maintaining, maybe a little less or a little more, but you maintain it and pull it along on a string and pull a trigger whenever you want. So there's different types of shooting. There's diminishing lead, where you let the bird catch up to you and you shoot. There's spot shooting, where the bird comes and you just pull the trigger based on the gap. So there's different methods of shooting a moving target, basically 5 of them that I just mentioned, right? So if you're shooting, let's say, a sustained lead, where you're pulling the bird along on a string, matching the speed of the target, if you shoot basically at the middle of the bird versus the front of the bird, it's only going to be a couple feet difference depending on distance. You had mentioned 30 yards. So the difference is, let's say at 30 yards, we're shooting a 1,300 foot per second load, and it's 30 yards and it's flying at like a standard 30 miles an hour. We're looking at a fact of like 2.5, 3 feet of lead. You're going to need about 3 feet of lead. Okay. So if you're shooting right at the head of the bird, moving with it, you're going to shoot behind its tail, just behind it, right?
Okay.
But if you're shooting a couple feet in front of the beak, you're going to end up hitting them in the head, neck, and breast, which means it's a dead duck. So not only do you have the size of the duck to consider, but you also have the size of your pattern.
Yep.
So that's why ballistics, choke choice, and ammo choice become very important, right?
Yep.
So, like, not to get off the subject, because we could talk about this for days, and we've touched base on this, but based on your question, I want to clarify something. If you're using the right choke and the right ammo, at 30 yards, you should have a minimum of a 32-inch usable pattern. 32
Okay.
inches minimum
At 30 yards.
at 30 yards. If
Okay.
you're using the right ammo and the right choke. It
Yes.
doesn't mean that you only have a 12-inch pattern or a 12-inch effective pattern. So if you have a 32-inch effective pattern, that means you could be off 28 inches and still kill a bird.
Wow.
Okay?
That's a lot.
Yeah, it is. But the problem is we've gotten away from that because everybody keeps sticking in our head, we got to shoot full and extra full at everything to kill it, or we've got to shoot, BBs to kill it, or we've got to shoot this hyper velocity to kill it. And all of this stuff is destroying our shooting ability, So,
Yeah.
so that's why I'm so passionate about teaching this, because I see it every time I hunt with people. It's not occasional. It's every time and almost every person.
You know what the first words I said to Devin were?
What?
What's your tightest choke when I first called him the first time?
Yeah,
He
you and
did
90% of everybody else.
Oh man, he goes, why do you want that? And I was thinking, why does he ask me why I want that? I know why I want that.
Yeah,
but
he's
then
speaking through me.
It's all been downhill after that. I told you the other day, my whole mindset of thinking has been like something, M&Ms in a jar. You just shook them up and messed me all up.
Yep.
In a good way though.
When I took my friend, when my friends and I went to Canada the last trip, several years ago now, the last day of the hunt, we were hunting a swampy pond in the back of the guide's house, and there were all different types of ducks: mallards, teal, gadwall, widgeon, shovelers, pintail. I mean, it was a beautiful, beautiful setup. And we had hunted it the day before, and everybody was shooting the chokes they wanted to shoot. They're all shooting Muller chokes, but most of the guys were shooting passing. Some were shooting UFO, and they were shooting. We were all mostly shooting 3-inch, ounce and 3/8 fours. Some of the guys had to have their 2s because they thought they needed it to kill stuff. So the last day, I said to everybody, "Okay, everybody, you're gonna trust me. We're gonna have fun, and I'm gonna teach you something." Everybody put my decoy choke in, and we are not bringing anything in the blind other than 2 3/4 inch, ounce and a quarter, 1275 steel 4s. That's it. And everybody started laughing. They thought I was busting them on them. They thought I was joking. I'm like, no, man, I'm serious. That's all we're doing. And they're like, what? We're not going to kill anything. I said, that's exactly why we're going to do it, because I want to teach you something. We went out there. We were smoking ducks at 50 yards like you shot them with lead. Smoking them. Wow. And these guys, every one of them, 5 other of my friends, they said they had never shot that good in their lives. Ever. They said that there were ducks dying that they never thought they would have hit. So to this day, they still shoot my decoy choke, and a lot of them stopped buying 3-inch shells because they're still shooting 2 3/4 inch steel 4s.
Man,
it's insane.
It is insane, and it's amazing. I bet you, it's so awesome for you to see how many times you've seen that look in people's face after they experienced it themselves, and you can just tell you wreck their whole mindset, which in a good way, right? Like it's just that look you probably see that look so many times.
Yeah,
I bet you anytime someone will just trust and do it.
Yes,
man, it's crazy. Like, almost want to take a moment of silence for the loss of
the gain of shooting ability overnight.
Yeah.
So many examples and scenarios and times when I have literally, whether it was on the sporting clay course, even during a competition, or whether it was in a duck blind or on a beach in Cape Cod or wherever it was, I have literally had people fire one shot and put the gun down and just be like, oh my God, what was that? And like, they didn't even fire a second shot because they were just so amazed at what they just saw. Like, I even had people do it in competition in a station where they shot and like broke a target and forgot to shoot the second target because they couldn't even believe what they saw. Wow. Because like masterclass shooter, first time using my chokes, shoots at a pair of targets, hits the target but breaks both targets, right? Shoots and breaks both targets, and just like totally blown away. Or shoots and breaks a target and and doesn't shoot the second target because they realized they were way off of that target and it should never have broke, and it
Right.
broke hard. And it totally was such a mind blow. They didn't even
Yep.
shoot the second target because they didn't understand why it broke. I mean,
Well,
crazy
that's the
stuff.
and that's the thing that's happened to me. So when you first came on and you were blowing my mind by all this information, by facts and by scientific reality,
Evidence.
I don't know what the better
Yep.
word, geometry and whatever, however you want to say it. You were telling me all those things. I hadn't shot your choke yet. I hadn't even patterned it. I hadn't hunted with it. So I'm believing everything you're saying because it's science, right? And I don't know what else, what would be the other term it would be?
Physics.
There you go.
Yep.
So okay. So that's what I believe in facts. You can't, that's just what it is, right? Like I'm not going to try to argue with facts and physics and all that. So I totally believed you and it made all sense. But now I've went through a season with it. All those things you're saying about I know I was behind the bird, yet I still got him. It wasn't maybe a headshot, but I still smoked the bird. Multiple situations. Shooting on the water was a huge thing. Like if something was a cripple on the water,
Yes.
or I was going to water swat something at a very far distance that I was shocked. Harrison said, the same thing. It was like I've never, ever shot at something on the water and did what that choke did that I seen. And so I've spent a whole season through it. And now it's not just believing physics, it's believing proof, right? And seeing
Yes.
it. And it's every bit as jaw dropping as you're saying it is. That's the
Yes.
thing is sometimes
Yep.
you hear in this industry or just in, I don't know what the right word I'm looking for is, but when you look at an industry, when there's a product out or there's something and people are trying to push it, of course they're going to say that and you're always questioning it.
Yes.
This is by far one product. And not just that, just the speed of the ammo too, right? With
Yes.
depending on whatever you're shooting. Like you said, just still, that has never ceased to amaze me and has actually blown my mind of anything I've ever done in my life when it comes to waterfowl. I've never had nothing shock me and totally change my thinking process like this has.
Yes, and thanks, Titus. So the reason that I decided to give the warranty I do is exactly that reason, because I know that they do what we've never seen before because I made it that way, right? I've been
Yep.
duck hunting since 1975. I've owned and shot every choke in the market. I've owned and shot every ammo made, literally, without exaggeration. Even ammo from other countries that we don't even know exist, I've used it. And I've shot pretty much every gun made, right? Except for some of the off brand ones that I refuse to put my hands and pull a trigger on. I've shot every known brand gun that's made. And not only have I shot them, but I've tested them. I've shot targets, I've shot birds, right? So the choke tube that I created, I invented, I created, I tested, I changed, I fine tuned. I did it because I was unhappy with what was out there, right? So the reason mine do what they do is because I changed the system. I fixed what was broken. And it doesn't matter whose choke it is, what choke it is, mine are different, right? I've done something different to improve. So the reason that I chose to give the warranty I do, which is 60-day money back guarantee, you don't think it's the best in the world to give your money back, 60-day free constriction exchange. I'll swap constrictions if in case what you got was too tight or too open. And then lifetime replacement warranty. Even if you damage it by accident, I give you a new one, right? The reason that I have that warranty in place, which is by far better than anything in the industry, is because I want you to experience the difference. I'm trying to force you just to try it at no risk, just so you can experience what shotgunning is supposed to be. Not what it's been, but what it's supposed to be and what it really is and what it can be for you. And because that's what I've experienced. I've learned it.
Yeah.
People say to me, oh, how can you condone shooting a bird at 80 yards? Well, look at my shot cam video I just posted. I fired one shot at one duck over the water at 80 yards. The pattern was explosive. The bird is dead. What else do you want me to say? I did it.
Right.
And I
Right.
do it consistently
Yeah.
because I know my choke, I know my pattern, I know the ballistics of the ammo I'm shooting. So I can do it. And guess
Yeah.
what? You can too. But the only reason that we haven't done it is because we've been blinded by myth, we've been blinded by false marketing, and we've been blinded by mentors, coaches, instructors, and buddies telling us, huh, don't shoot past 40 yards or you're sky bust, and that's unethical.
Yeah.
40 yards is close, man.
Yeah.
So,
It.
it is what it is. It's truth. It's fact. If you want to deny it, that's fine. But I'm here to tell you it's truth.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, what else do you? I know I totally derailed everything right there. Sorry about that.
No,
But
that's all right. But it's stuff that people
I guess I
hear.
ain't gonna lie. I do get excited about it, and it's hard not to go back to when your mind's just totally blown and totally revamped. So it is hard not to just kind of beat a dead horse a little bit, and I try not to do that no more. But it is the truth, and I guess I haven't had a real conversation on talking about that choke. Just maybe myself. Maybe me and Harrison need to do that, like just me and him.
Yes.
Just our thoughts, because it's just the proof's in the pudding, and it's not only physics, it's which is plenty enough, right?
Yep.
It trumps everything, but like just seeing it and hearing all the feedback I got this last season from all the people that shot him, it was unbelievable.
Yep.
I mean, and so if I was selling a product and I was that confident and I knew it like you do, I would not mind offering that, because I know 99% of the time no one is going to send you that back.
No.
So, if someone can say, well, that's just a business strategy. It's like, well, I guess it kind of is, but the only reason you're doing that is because it's not going to get sent back, right?
Exactly. I mean,
and
the reason that people send chokes back either for exchange or a refund, the only ones we ever get back, which is very rare, we get exchanges because people buy the UFO and they're punching holes and stuff and they're not hitting anything because they're shooting at 25 yards and they think they need the tightest pattern available, but mine really are tight. It's not blown. Or they're beginner shooters. They're shooting at 20, 25 yards and they don't see an improvement over their factory choke or whatever else they're shooting because it didn't give them the opportunity to see a difference, because they're not a good enough shooter to see a difference, nor do they have the opportunity to experience the benefits yet. And that's more rare than, exchanging chokes from, oh, it's too tight. I get some people even buying the passing, and they'll shoot it and they're shooting teal or wood ducks in the timber. And they're like, oh my Lord, I'm blowing everything apart. I'm like, yeah, you should be using the decoy, but that's it, and that's the reason I offer the exchange program, because I don't want people to ever be stuck with something they don't love, because I know if you get my right choke, you're going to love it. Right. Yeah. Even if I have to coach you one-on-one about the right ammo, you're going to love my choke. And I want to make sure that you have the right one that's best for you, and 80% of those people, it's the decoy choke.
Yeah.
When I'm hunting puddle ducks, my decoy choke doesn't come out of my gun.
Yeah. No, it don't need to. I realize that. I told you this last season, some of the shots I made with that choke, everybody around me, jaw just went, like, because they're like, I thought that's an open choke. I'm like, well, it's not necessarily considered that. It's called a decoy choke, but shoot the right thing, and the pattern is just awesome. That was with my 20 gauge. That's the only thing I've even shot it with,
Yes.
So we just got your chokes in yesterday, and we're super stoked. Thomas and Harrison are excited. We're gonna be doing pattern videos just to let everybody know.
Cool.
In fact, actually, by the time this episode releases, I think we might already have some out by then. But we're gonna be doing that in multiple different guns with multiple different chokes, and just to reiterate something that we've talked about behind the scenes, to let everybody know, be patient. If your choke is not in stock, he's made some big moves, and he is. If you want to say something about Jimmy, you can, but they will be in stock, and that will probably never see again where you can't get the choke you want.
Yeah, we our sales, we've been blessed. People are learning about the benefits of Muller choke, so sales have grown very quickly. And so what we've done, we've just bought another CNC turning center with a bar feeder, and now we've doubled capacity again. Hired another master tool maker to run that machine, so running multiple shifts now, multiple machines. We've increased everything. So moving forward for next duck season, I'm really optimistic that we're going to have a lot less back order than we did this past season. We projected Titus, but when I projected, I was pretty aggressive on my projections. My projections weren't enough. So we got a little behind the eight ball. But hey, it's a good problem to have. But
that's a good problem.
It's a problem, and I don't want to have that problem for my customers and my families out there. And I want people to be able to get what they need. And I'm doing everything I can possibly to make that happen.
Yeah, and I brought that up just to let people know it's a good thing. Like sales exploded, and so that's nothing. That's not saying anything on you. That's in a bad way. It's saying something about your product in a good way.
Absolutely.
So just bringing that up, that there's a lot new things you got coming and factories, and like you said, workers. So it's going to be. I'm excited for you and double the output that you got there. I guess we're kind of out of time. Hopefully I didn't cut too much off at the end of. Is there anything you want to wrap up on the topic that we started with?
Just a couple quick things. So number one, like we were just talking about, I make all the chokes one at a time. They're not spit out of screw machines. They're all made here in Connecticut, literally one at a time. We machine the part, we open the door, we hand polish it, and then we cut it off, and then we do all the other stuff to it. So every single choke's made one at a time, which is why they take so long to make, and all the different things that I do with them. That's why they cost what they do, but that's also why they have the warranty they do, right? Getting back to what we talked about with the shooting and the different scenarios, get out to a sporting clay course. If you're shooting a lot of birds inside 40 yards, practice on sporting clays. If you have the opportunity to go to a five stand's nice because you could practice on one target at a time until you master it, and then move to another target presentation. Move closer to the target, move back from the target, learn it until you cannot miss it. Move to the next presentation. Do not give up on a target until you've mastered it, which means you could break it 10 times in a row without missing. Shoot it 10 times in a row. If you miss the ninth one, you start all over. You got to break 10 in a row before you move to the next target, or until you change shooting methods, right? You need to get it ingrained into your subconscious and your sight plan and your move, everything. And when you start to do these things, your shooting ability is going to go through the roof, and you're going to be very happy you did it. Close targets out to 40 yards, sporting clays, 5 stand for practicing individual targets and mastering them. And then if you want to really learn how to shoot really far targets, you can do that on some sporting clay courses. But when I'm talking about really far targets, I'm talking past 50 yards out to 100. You need to go to a nice feet task parkour layout where you could practice, low gun and mounting to these targets and learning how to break targets past 50 yards. If that's what you're interested in with sea ducks and long shooting abilities, especially if you're a big snow goose hunter or sea duck hunter, you have the opportunity to make these types of shots. And with Muller chokes and with the right ammo, you can do it day in and day out all day long. Don't be afraid to push it. Don't be discouraged by people telling you can't do it or you shouldn't do it. It's just that they're going by old, obsolete information that is not true. It's false. And, you can do it. You just need to want to do it. And if you want to do it, you can do it. I promise you.
Yep. Thank you so much, man. This is another gold podcast recorded again. Thank you so much again for coming on.
You're welcome.
Again, we have a lot more. We have a lot more coming up, and I don't want to burn Jimmy out for doing these, but I think he probably enjoys them too. I know I do.
No,
I love
we
it.
got
Love
tons
talking.
more we could talk about, Titus. It could go on
Yep.
forever. Lots and
Yep.
lots of information.
Yep. So, guys, thanks for listening in, and don't forget to rate and review this podcast and share it with others. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, every podcast platform you can think of. We're also on YouTube, the MVM Show YouTube channel. Specifically, it's just for podcast versus our regular YouTube Mid-Valley Mercenaries channel. So thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.
Awesome.